There are many facets to the gospel presented in the Bible. It's presented in different ways. Um, so you could be someone that has very different ideas, and you could read through multiple passages, and that they may not speak to you, and then you get to one that really makes a lot of sense. Timothy talks about arbitration, that Jesus is sort of an arbitrator between man and God, and that when he died on the cross, he sided with you. Okay, that God had condemned sin, you were a sinner, the arbitrator is Christ, and he sided for you. That would be a really good example of a gospel presentation in the Bible that's very different from others. Here in Romans that I'm looking at, it presents the gospel in a really unique way throughout the entire course of the Bible. And it basically says this: there is the law of God, which you can acknowledge with your mind and say, if everybody did that, it'd be a good thing. Jesus, when he said, not one iota of the law will disappear, and do unto others as you would do unto yourself, right? So he presents the law as something that is good, but is also can't actually be followed. And why is that? Because there's another law, is what Paul says. What's the other law? Well, the other law is of the flesh. And what he says is, he says, with his mind he sees that the law of God is good, but with his flesh he lives out a different law altogether. And so since his flesh lives out a different law altogether, those two things are in combat. Okay? They're in combat, and so there can't be any reconciliation between those two things. So here in the Romans passage I'm looking at, which is Romans 8, 1 through 11, he has a really interesting take. He basically says this: so since your flesh is at combat with the law of God, what God did was he sent his son to die in the flesh on the cross, so that the sin, that alien sin that comes through our flesh, would be condemned by him on the cross in his flesh. And so this law of the sin of the flesh can be condemned by the flesh. And so those who believe this will be saved. And so what does this mean? What does this mean? It basically means this. I was watching a video where this guy had, I think, a very short-sighted take on belief. He said, if you believe something, if I can find it, I'll put the link in the description. If you believe something, it means you're already admitted that you don't think it's actually true. Okay, he thought he didn't think it through too. At least he tried to think it through, right? Some people don't even go that far, but unfortunately, what he doesn't really realize, there's something known as an epistemic chain. Okay, and it's just this idea that some things have to be before you can arrive at knowledge. And one of the foundational things to arrive at what you would call knowledge is that whatever it is that you claim to have knowledge of, you have to actually believe it. For example, I always say, the example I like to give is, if you say that you know the moon isn't made out of green cheese, it also means that it just comes with it that you don't believe that the moon is made out of green cheese, right? So but what is belief, though? Because the guy is bringing something up that is kind of interesting here. What is belief? And belief, in some sense, is some form of taking our volition and submitting it to something. Now, I don't want to get into free will and predestination and all that. We could debate that from a theistic to an atheistic standpoint. What I want to get into here, though, is there is some way in which what's that noise? It's the couch buddy. Yeah, out of it. So she got ready before she heard any sermon that I've made. So basically it boils down to this. Jesus died on the cross for your sin. Do you believe that? Despite everything else, if you submit your will and you say, I believe that. And then then the question is this: do you believe he rose in the flesh as a to show you a promise that you also are going to rise in the flesh? You won't be condemned in your flesh. Okay, you will be given a new, a new heavens, new earth, new body. If you believe that, okay, and then finally, if you believe that he ascended and is going to return, as hard as those things may be to believe intellectually, if you say with my volition, I believe these things. I don't know how I'm going to figure it all out. I don't know what the consequences are, and I really don't care. I believe these things. You will be saved. And that's that.